Oh. Well, sorry to everyone who I accidentally turned the camera on for while I'm adjusting it. Clumsy fat fingers. It's okay, we're going to be getting started soon anyways. I suppose I could just like stop recording, take that clip and delete it, but you know, that's work. There we go, that's a bit better. That'll do. Alright, shall we get started? Good morning, everybody. How's everybody doing this morning?
Pretty good.
I heard we're supposed to have a high of +3 today.
what?
A high of +3 degrees centigrade.
Oh, well, that was a college thing, but no, it's a temperature thing.
I'm just commenting on the weather. I think, like, even the most, you know, cold-hardened, frozen warrior has got to be getting a little tired of it at this point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's still only early February, you know? Oh, man. Be glad you don't live in Alberta. I lived in Alberta when I was a kid for a few years, and my goodness, it's like expect this type of weather right from like middle of October to the end of April, you know? It's a wonder they can get anything to grow there at all. Mostly just canola. So, let's talk about assignment 2. Now that assignment 1 is past and gone, we can move forward with our lives. So, all right, I will perform my usual thing of being Steve Interpreter, and the professor who wrote these can be a little bit verbose in the. I'm sure you noticed in assignment 1 he's a little bit verbose. So I will play the role of interpreter for you. Basically, here's the general thrust of this assignment. You are to solve a small sample of coding problems based in JavaScript. You are to make little forms for each of them and integrate all of those forms into a bootstrap JavaScript component of your choice. The individual problems themselves I would say, are not one of them is particularly difficult. They kind of read as a test question or a question from intro programming might. They're not particularly long or involved. Many of them boil down to one good loop or one good if statement, that kind of territory. So the programming work itself is mostly about hooking things up correctly to a web page in JavaScript. Make sense? Good. And don't worry if you're like, I don't know how to do that, because by the end of today you will know. Okay? All right, let's get started. The goals of this assignment are practice modifying Bootstrap components and sample code, practice writing software solutions problems. Yes, because this isn't tech writing. You guys have tech writing this semester? Or is it in third semester?
This semester.
It's this semester? Yeah. How's it going?
Pretty good, actually. I'd say it's relatively easy compared to the other courses.
Good. It's not meant to be the one that kills you, you know?
Yeah, that's meant to be Java.
And this one, if I'm, if I'm doing the subject any degree of justice. JavaScript is a harder language than Java. Always keep that in mind. I don't mean to be like wagging the finger this early on a Tuesday morning, but there you go. I did it anyway. It's dad projection. I had to do parenting this morning, so I'm still in kind of a eat your breakfast kind of mode, Number 3, practice reading input from a web page using JavaScript. And number 4, practice writing output to specified HTML elements, tongue twister, HT elements from JavaScript. So we are programmers, all right? If you do not yet consider yourself a programmer, you should do swiftly. We must always, 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 when we are writing up any program of any length or complexity, we must always have 2 things firmly in mind. What is my input and what is my output? Right? Now in JavaScript, both input and output will be HTML elements of a page. We are going to be learning today how to use them thusly. Make sense? Very good. Moving on. All elements in your submission must be styled to some degree, but you are not expected to try to create a work of art. A neat professional design will be very sufficient. Honestly, CSS is kind of we're kind of getting to the point where CSS is getting a bit optional if you are good enough at using Bootstrap. So, you will have one HTML file, one JavaScript, and at most one CSS file. Notice the thing says you do not have to create a CSS file for this assignment. If you're good at Bootstrap, you don't need a CSS file. Yes, all your JavaScript must appear in an external JavaScript file and must be loaded in the head component. Very good. I showed you how to do that. We talked about defer, right? Perhaps we'll go over it again. So, Bootstrap JavaScript component. I'm going to demonstrate how to you in class how to add a carousel to a web page. Carousel is like a kind of moving sideways slideshow type affair. It's very easy. You just copy a component off W3 Schools and boom, make a few modifications and you're there, right? So, You're not permitted to use accordion, or pardon me, you're not permitted to use carousel for your assignment, since that's going to be a direct in-class example. Rather, you may pick from one of the following options: accordion, collapse, modal, pop over, scroll spy, or toasts. These are all different forms of components that you can use. They all, roughly speaking, pop up a little window area that you can drop some HTML components in, right? Most of them are various forms of collapsing things. Now, if you don't have any particular affection for any of those and you want to make an arbitrary decision about it, please don't just pick the first one, all right? There are 6 options here. If you are trying to select one randomly, then a standard 6-sided chance cube is an appropriate way to make that decision, right? If you're having difficulty deciding, break out the hexahedrons. So, we'll show you how to do that. The content of each section of your chosen component, similar to each slide in the carousel, will be the output to a programming problem that you have solved in JavaScript. Technically, the input and the output. Each of these containers have an input element and a text area. Text area must have the attributes read-only and need to be used for your solution output. You should give them IDs to make them easier to select in JavaScript. Each input element should have an onChange attribute that corresponds to the function you create. Okay? Note, onChange attribute. All right? You're going to be graded on how well you fulfill these requirements. There are deductions for straying from this way of doing things. So, do you guys know the difference between an input text box and a text area?
The input text box is like a pop-up box, and the other one's like in the console?
Not quite. Do you know what rich text is?
Rich text?
Yeah. It's a rich text box. Here. Text area. So it is its own element type, right? It's not an input element. This is what they look like. Most particularly, you know it's a text area if it's got that little dongle in the corner that allows you to resize the text box. That is a rich text box, okay? So these are what are required. They need to be read-only. Okie dokie? So, into each of these, you must perform 5 programming exercises. But you have, it's one of these like, here are 3, pick 2 kind of affairs. So, the group 1 problems, you are to select 2 of them. I'm not going to go through them in detail. I would consider any one of these reasonable to put before you on a test. Some of them I would consider very reasonable to put before you on a test. Some of these I would consider like midterm of intro programming kind of territory, actually. Like reading the first one. I said I wouldn't read them, but I will read the first one, just giving you an example. Read the input from the document if the input is numeric and if the input is 0, or if it's between 13 and 17 inclusive, output in range, otherwise output out of range. If it's not a number, output not a number. That's just an if statement, right? So that's kind of like, That's obviously the easiest one, but they're all kind of like, you know, you've got like easy questions, medium questions, and hard questions, but even the hard questions aren't that hard. Okay? I don't think I have to say this with this group, but it's very important that you do these problems yourself. This is very, very essential programming practice. If you want to pass the test, you have to do the practice. There are group 2, there's a select 2 of 3 again, and then group 3, select one of the 2 that are presented. For full marks, you only need to do 2 from group 1, 2 from group 2, and 1 from group 3. If you're a super ultra keener and you love math, which you should, everybody should love math, math is great. But if you want to do the rest of the problems, you know, I'm happy that you should do so, it's good practice. I'm only going to mark the first 2 though, okay? No extra credit for doing extra problems on this one. Okay? Sound good? Thumbs up? Alright, there we go. So aside from that, miscellaneous requirements. You must use Bootstrap 5 to achieve the majority of styling on your page. Any other version will result in a grade of 0, which seems a bit harsh. So basically, use Bootstrap 5, not Bootstrap 3, please. Use semantic elements, follow the style guide, and validate your HTML using the validator. Any questions? Yes?
In the goals of this assignment, what does it mean by practice modifying Bootstrap from sample code? Like, it sounds like it's saying modify Bootstrap itself.
Oh. No, you don't have to modify Bootstrap itself. Shall we proceed to the carousel demonstration? I'll show you what you need to do.
The what cell demonstrations?
Carousel.
Ah.
You know, like on a
I heard
like
carrot cell for some reason.
carrot self? Yeah, the carrot self
No,
demonstration.
carrot cell.
Oh, no, it's so carousel. You know, like at a fair, you know, like the
carousel,
horses,
that.
like
Yeah, that.
the first thing that you always build in Roller Coaster Tycoon, because it adds the background music. That
Like
one.
Roller Coaster Tycoon.
Oh, you gotta play Roller Coaster Tycoon. It's a classic.
I might.
Yeah, it's great. And you can get it for like uber cheap too.
There's another game that's taking up my time. You're probably going to see it on the website project.
Yeah. Morning. Sorry. I didn't hear you at the back because you're sitting under a loud machine.
I don't know if this was a different roller coaster-esque tycoon game, but one of the roller coaster tycoons had this like secret level called like the Haunted Mansion or something, and it scared the crap out of a bunch of kids.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because apparently the developers made it as a joke and then forgot to actually remove it from the code.
Yeah, I don't recall that being like Roller Coaster Tycoon made by Chris Sawyer. Might be like the thing about Roller Coaster Tycoon is like it was one of those games that kind of created a genre.
Yeah.
You know, so like if you're looking at like the late 90s, early 2000s, like there is just like there's a stupidly large number of like business simulator kind of games on various themes, so wouldn't surprise me. All right, can everybody please get a code editor up and running? We shall do a little bit of coding.
There you
Some very light coding for your Tuesday morning. All right. Let's drop in a little bit, just, you know, the barest essentials of an HTML page. Can you see this at the back?
A little bigger.
Yeah, we can barely see it.
That's actually my maximum. Is that good?
Better than nothing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, not to be that guy, but, you know, the front row is also empty. So, yeah?
Should you put doc type at the top?
Yes. Do as I say, not as I do. Technically, this puts it in quirks mode, which is not generally what you want, but what am I doing? H2. There we go. So we're going to create a carousel. Well, we're going to copy in a carousel. So, in case you're not familiar with carousel, you guys, how many of you know Steam? Most of you. So you know the thing where it like shows you a bit of a game for a few seconds and then it moves to the next one on like the Steam store page? That's a carousel, right? So I will just caution you though, if you Google Bootstrap carousel, just be a little careful, right? The top link I can see at the moment is carousel in Bootstrap 5.3, references Bootstrap, but we are looking for the W3 Schools version, right? And taking a look, there it is, right? Here's the thing, folks. It's not obvious from the page, but if I scroll up to the sidebar, what version of Bootstrap are we on right now? Oh, you guys can't read from
That's 3, right?
That's a 3, yeah. So basically, it's necessary to put Bootstrap 5 in your search term, okay? Otherwise, you end up in the wrong place, and the code won't work. There we go. Bootstrap 5 carousel. You can see the buttons are a different shape now. So, the other thing we need to do, if you're going to use Bootstrap anything in your website, what do you need to do? Yeah, you need to get Bootstrap, right? You need to get the CDN up and working. This is so annoying. Get Bootstrap. Boink. Copy. Pasta. Copy. Pasta. There we go. Bootstrap's now in the website. So let's return here. So you can see this is the basic idea of a carousel. Obviously, it's possible to improve these by adding more slides. Interestingly, these don't have to be images. Each one of these things that flips is just a div, and you can theoretically put anything you want in them, right? Generally speaking, though, it's very rare to have much more than just an image in there. So, notice that immediately under the example of the carousel, there is a large block of program, well, that's not really programming code. There's a large chunk of markup that we need to copy into our web page. This is the carousel code. You can kind of probably see why you don't want to configure this yourself, right? So copy it. This is one of the few times when copy pasting is condoned. So there we have it. Now, we don't have these images. Let's go and grab some images from the internet and, modify the thing. There. Maybe that's better. Images.google.ca. Let's see here. A picture of a duck. Call it duck 1. Ducks are fantastic comedy animals. And they come in a wide variety of attractive colors. There we go. These ones are actually native to this region. If you go to the, if you go hiking around the RPG area, you'll sometimes see these things. Mallards are overwhelmingly the most common ones around here, though. And then we have the Cayuga duck. There we go. Notable for the funny little curve in the tail, little tail hook thing. All right, so we have our ducks. So a little bit of navigation. Here, these divs are the content, the divs that constitute the slides themselves. So if you want to modify the content of the slideshow, well, that is where you do it. If you want to add more slides to the slideshow, it's as easy as adding more divs of this type. However, keep in mind, if you add more slides, you should also add more buttons for the slides, which are located just above. Make sense? Any questions?
We'll order them. They're the same order as they are in the carousel inner.
Sorry, could you speak up a little bit?
We're ordering the images. You just put them in however order you want in the carousel inner class.
Yes. Yeah, just put them in order And that's the ordering that you want, yeah. Yeah, there's no, like, list of ordering. Yes?
Well, how did you know that fast? I was still getting my images.
Ah! Alright. Well, get your images.
No, I got my images.
Oh, you got them? Okay, good. Let's put them in then.
So wait, how did you get all like that carousel thing already? Was it like an already established thing, or did you just type that fast?
Oh no, I'm good, but I'm not that good.
Oh.
No, it's just copy pasted from here. Make sure you get the Bootstrap 5 version. So, taking a look in our directory, you should always, when working in a Windows operating system, enable file extensions so that you can see what the file extensions are. Gesundheit. Because you're not children. Alright? Windows is an operating system that likes to think that you're a child and that you can't handle the idea of a file extension. This should not be true. So, we have duck1.gfif, we have duck2.webp, and we have duck3.jpg. In my case, you'll use whatever you have. So, have you guys, did they explain to you what the purpose is of the alt attribute on images? Yes?
If an image isn't working, it shows what the alt is, so you can find it easier.
Yes. So it's also the tooltip text that if you like mouse over the image, that's the tooltip that pops up. But there's one more important reason that you always want to include descriptive alt tags. If someone is blind and using a screen reader, that's actually all they have to go on for the image, right? So it's important to provide some description of the image for accessibility reasons. Now, how a screen reader is going to deal with the Bootstrap 5 carousel, I have no idea, but you know, maybe they've got it figured out. So this is a mallard duck, this is a wood duck, and this is a cayuga duck. Let's view our page. Whoa. So you can see it works, but it's a little big, right? So, since we're using Bootstrap, let's sneak this thing into a container to sort of control the size, eh? There we go. That's a bit better. And there you have it. A carousel of ducks. Now, one thing that's a little bit important. Oh, question. Sorry? Yes?
Yeah, the slideshow isn't working for me.
For me.
Let me take a look.
Probably that's the mistake. That'd be great.
In your case, I wonder if it's Oh, like, oh, the buttons aren't working.
Yes, they're working in a cold. Sit on this for now.
Mine doesn't appear to be doing that either. Is that the same issue that you're having?
Yeah, that is, mark that's automatically.
Maybe there was some Java ones coming, we just didn't see.
I may have not copied the bootstrap script file. Let's see here. So, go to get bootstrap and put the other one. Scroll down. You need that one too. Yeah. That's actually the difference between the bootstrap, like regular bootstrap and the bootstrap JavaScript components. The reason they call them the JavaScript components is because they need the JavaScript. There you go.
I know, but look, that's right for me.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be like little transitions that just apps and stuff.
Oh, no, there is a real transition, but because
Yeah.
you're talking from W3 schools, it doesn't include the things. Because I don't think at the time of Bootstrap 3 that they had the transitions. Unless you also forgot.
Where did you get the source from? I don't think it does. I don't know. We got more important things to talk about, and this isn't like accordion and stuff like that are easier than this anyway. So, question.
My images aren't just even showing up.
Yes. You need to import Bootstrap.
Oh, right. Where's?
So go to getbootstrap.com and copy in the CDN links. Yeah. Basically, you know how this class works at this point. Any time that I'm not bitterly complaining about how awful JavaScript is time I'm wasting in class. So I'd like to move on to complaining bitterly about JavaScript. Hey, sorry?
We put it in head, right?
Yes. Yeah, my arrows are gone. Well, anyway, one thing to note about this is if you're going to put images in a carousel, make sure they all have the same aspect ratio. Because as I'm sure you saw, some of you, most of you, if your images have different aspect ratios, it kind of like, it'll just kind of like expand and contract the element as it needs to, unless you constrain the size. Yes?
Mine just still aren't showing up.
Let me see. Oh, no, it is working now. You're missing the image files.
Yeah, I put in image files. That's the correct one. Like, it's not showing up. Like, what you said.
Show your directory, if I may.
Like, files?
Yep. Where are those located? Yeah, those are in your downloads. They have to be in the same folder as your web page, the same as you're loading any other image.
Gotcha.
All right. So, time for some practical JavaScript. So, we've studied a fair amount of JavaScript at this point. We've seen how the language works. We've seen how functions work. We've seen a bit of how we can use references to the document to modify properties in the document. What we haven't done is hooked JavaScript up so that it's activated from the page. We've been doing everything through console so far, right? So, allow me to demonstrate for you a button that makes the title red. First things first, we'll need a button.
It's still not showing up.
There we go.
Sir, it's still not showing up.
I have to move on. I'll have to talk to you at break or after class about it. So, the button, which says click me, creates a button on the page. So we have it. Now, we need to add some JavaScript. Script source equals app.js or something to that effect. There we go. Very good. We will, of course, need to create the app.js file. Make sure that your JavaScript file is connected correctly in the right folder. So, development tip. A lot of the difficulty for a beginner, even for an intermediate web programmer, is just getting the thing to activate at the right time when the right thing is clicked, regardless of its functionality. So, my recommendation to all of you, no matter where you're going with it, just start everything with a hello world. See if you can get output to happen, and if you can move from there. If you can get output to happen, at least things are in the right folder, things are hooking up correctly. That's your first hurdle. Right? Make sense? So, console.log JS loaded. There we go. And as we can see, because I imported my JavaScript correctly, and it's in the same folder, I get JS loaded, everything is cool. Sound good? Any questions so far? All right, so, now, it is our goal to write some JavaScript that runs when this button is clicked. We're going to do this the easy way, and then we're going to do this the hard way. All right? In all cases, the code that we are running in JavaScript needs to be encapsulated in a function. All right? We need to write a function. Function, button click. So far, so good. Again, let's just put a simple print statement in that so that we know that the function has run. Make sense? Following me so far? Yeah? Good, good, good. Very good. Now, this is fine, but defining a function does not automatically bind it to an HTML component. The easy way to do this The easy and less flexible way of doing this many HTML components support a suite of attributes which allow you to bind JavaScript functions to certain event types. OnClick is one of them. OnChange is another. OnChange is the one that's required by your assignment. Not all events apply to all element types. You can't do an OnChange for a static button because there's nothing to change, right? The user isn't giving any input. So, you simply specify the name of the function. You also include the round braces which call the function. Technically speaking, you can pass arguments this way. We're not going to do that yet, though. So, click, 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 click. It works! Huzzah! I'll give you a moment. Anybody having difficulty with that? Everybody got that working? Anybody need assistance? All right. Very good. So, that's reasonably easy, hey? Not too bad. So, now let's make the title change colors. So, within JavaScript, in order to modify the properties of some element of the page, we need a reference to that element of the page. There are two ways to go about this. The first is to declare the reference locally inside of the function. The second is to declare it globally for the whole script. What do you guys think we should do, locally or globally? How many people think locally? How many people think globally? We'll show you both. So, in fact, let's do, here's an idea for you. Just to show off the difference here. In one case, I'm grabbing a local copy of I'm creating a local variable with a reference to this thing. In the other case, I'm creating a global one, right? Why am I using const? Why am I not using let? Not to do with the RAM. These are object references, right? Object references probably won't change, so they don't need to be variables. They can be constants. We should use constants anywhere we can use constants. So, h2 local dot style dot color. Oh, what's a good CSS color? Anyone?
Maroon?
Maroon. Awesome. Someone give me another CSS color. Yes. Violet, sure. So maroon text on a violet background. Oh boy. Should be interesting. So, all right. Click. Actually doesn't look too bad. There we go. Ta-da! It's caching the pointer. That's very annoying. All right. I wanted to demonstrate a thing, but the demonstration just didn't work because I think that it's like internally caching the pointer. So, all right. Let me separate these out and hopefully I'll demonstrate something I was supposed to. All right. So, if I comment out the global, right? The local, which is writing it to maroon, works fine. If, on the other hand, I'm working just with the global version. Ha! There, see? That's what I wanted. Wait, is this right? Local is not fine? Let me check my code. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm an idiot. I have local twice. Okay, maybe my demonstration will work. Let's see. Boink. Yeah, there we go. All right, thank you. So, note, I am writing maroon as the text color to the local variable. I am writing violet as the background color to the global variable. On the page, when I click the button, the maroon works, but the violet background does not, and I get, lo and behold, a type error. Good grief, you must be messing up JavaScript pretty bad to actually get an actual error, huh? JavaScript hates giving you errors. So, uncaught type error cannot read properties of null, reading style. So, what this means is that the global variable has null as a value. We can, in fact, interrogate this. if we call for the value of h2 global, we shall see that the value is null. Right? Does this make sense? Thumbs up? Is anyone paying attention? You are? Okay, good. All right, so the reason that the global variable didn't work but the local one did is very important, and it relates to the way that the web browser loads the various elements of the page. All right? So, let's think about program memory versus document object model memory. All right? Here for program memory, I don't mean the memory that the program itself is stored in. Perhaps we'll call it working memory. So, broadly speaking, we have three divisions of memory that we are trying to manage at the moment, right? We have working memory. This is your memory for variables in JavaScript, all right? Technically speaking, this is divided into stack and heap memory, but for our purposes, let's just lump this together as working memory. Oops, wrong one. There we go. We further have document object model memory. We also have program memory. So, hopefully everybody still has their code on their screen, right? So let's flip over to the HTML document, and we'll start loading this into our memory model the same way that the browser does. This will illustrate why it was that our global variable didn't work. Okay? So, when we load a web page, what is the first thing the browser loads? Somewhat important question. What's the first thing that the browser looks at?
HTML?
The HTML, that's right. So the HTML file. The browser creates an HTTP request, fires it off to the server sends back an HTML file initially. So, the browser then begins parsing the HTML file. How does it parse an HTML file?
Does it like encrypt it or something?
Nope. It decrypts it because it had to be encrypted to travel over the network. That is the first step, but let's say we have a decrypted file. How does the browser parse the file?
Does it check for the scripts they have?
So, because we linked it, right?
Yes.
Go ahead.
So, yeah, so in terms of practical performance, it will most likely go through a step of pre-scanning the file for additional required resources and starting the request bit for those as soon as possible, because network communication takes time, right? But there's a difference between the time it's received from the network and the time it's constructed into the page, right? So like a resource, like a JavaScript file or an image file, can be hanging out in memory waiting for the browser to get to it, right? As a pre-processing step. So the answer is, it starts from the top and reads one tag at a time, right?
So it will always read the head before like the body or styles or whatever.
Precisely.
Okay.
So, in our document object model for our HTML file, what's the first element?
The language, like HTML language English.
Yeah,
Does that count or?
yeah, that'll count. So first, what's the root node of the document object model? This is pre-existing and has to be there in all cases.
The dot type of HTML.
No. So we have an identifier in JavaScript called document,
Oh, that's what it is.
right? Everything gets loaded into this, right? So, doc type. Doc type, does it have any sub elements?
No.
So it's just hanging out on its own. What's the next thing?
The language.
So, that's HTML, language English. Language English is like the attribute, right? Yeah. But the element itself is the HTML element. Right? So far, so good. What's the next element we load?
Head,
Very good. Head. What's the next element we load?
title,
Hmm?
title,
No.
header,
The net.
Don't guess. We have a file that we've been working on. Yes.
Body. Or is it script?
Yeah, we gotta load the stuff in the head before we go to the body, right? We're going one line at a time as it appears in the file, right? So, in my file, I do the two elements that load Bootstrap, and then I have my own script, right? So one of these is a link, one of these is a script, right? Now, we come to my script. I'm going to circle that one because that's the one we're interested in, right? This is very important to understand. The browser, when it hits a script, stops parsing the HTML and parses the script instead. It switches over to JavaScript mode, right? So this is the state of the DOM when our JavaScript executes. So now let's execute our JavaScript. If everybody could swap over to our JavaScript file, please. So the first line in that file is a console log. Fine, its print statement lets you skip it. What's the next line?
A constant.
Yes, we are declaring the constant h2 global. So we are declaring a constant h2 global. Into that, we are putting the results of query selector all, looking for an h2 element in the page. Right? Now, let's do that. Okay. Where's my h2? Where's my h2? Do I have an h2 in there?
Not yet.
Not yet. At the present, I do not. So, Anybody care to guess what the return result of a failed search is?
No.
No?
No?
That's right. So because the H2 element that I am thinking I'm looking for here hasn't been loaded into the DOM, that search fails. We get a big fat null right there. That's the symbol for null, by the way. Okay, so this explains why the global variable didn't work, right? We were trying to get our reference before the element was loaded into the page. But let's just continue on, right? Let's continue on because we'll see why the local variable did work, okay? So, what's the next thing in that JavaScript file? What are we loading?
Function.
The function, button click. So, into program memory, we are putting the function button click. We are, in fact, even creating a reference to that function. Make sense? So, all right, remember, we're not executing it, right? We're just loading it. All right, that is everything in our JavaScript file. We can now go back to our HTML file. Back to the HTML file. That was the last element in our head, so what are we loading next? Body. What are we loading in the body?
H2 file.
The H2, and let's just ignore the bootstrap carousel thing. Oh yeah, we need the button too. Yeah, the button is important. So we've got H2, and we have the button. Now, when the button is created, it has the on-click attribute, right? So, technically it will be linked through the event table, but let's just, well, actually it's technically linked through the identifier. It gets there in the end. So the button is linked to this identifier, which is in turn linked to the definition of the function. Make sense? You guys following this? Yeah? Okay, so let's ignore the rest of the page. Everything's closed off. We're all good. All right? Now, what happens? Let's run through what happens when we click that button. So please switch back to your JavaScript source code file. So let's imagine that button click has just been pressed. So we're opening up a little region of memory for it, right? Console.log click, it's a print statement, we don't care. What's the first real line of code in that function?
Is it the constant?
Yes. We're creating a new constant. H2 local. Now, what are we putting in there?
Query selector H2.
Yes. So we are query selectoring for H2. Now, is there an H2 here?
It's right above the bottom.
Yeah. So, our H2 local now does indeed find an H2 element. This is not a null reference. right? Because the thing exists. So it didn't find the absence of an H2 element. So for the rest of this function, we assign something to this H2 element through this variable. That works. Text becomes maroon. We attempt to assign something here through this variable. It's null. It doesn't point anywhere, so that's a type error. And that is precisely what we saw in our program. Does that make sense? Hopefully, because this is like, this is like how JavaScript actually works. You need to be able to kind of mentally do the memory model if you're going to be effective JavaScript programmers. Yes?
So question, so
Sure.
in H2, it doesn't matter where it is on the body, right? Because it loads the whole body before you did a function with the body.
So it doesn't matter where this H2 is located in the DOM because of the way that we call the method, right? Document.querySelector will find the first instance of H2 that it encounters, and it will return a reference to that. If you want to get right down technical, it's using an algorithm called depth first search on the DOM tree.
Okay, so to fix this whole thing, you just needed a function for the global, I assume?
Well,
Function for it?
there are a number of ways that you can fix this problem, right? There are good ways and bad ways. One way to fix this problem is to load the value of that pointer dynamically when we execute the function, right? But we probably don't want to do that for performance reasons, right? The thing is, to find a reference in the DOM requires an actual algorithm, right? This thing takes an amount of time proportional to the size of the web page, right? Do we want to recalculate that every single time? Probably not, right? So it is, in my view, correct that we should have it as a global variable and not recalculate it each time. Even if it's something for something like this, we wouldn't notice a performance issue, but just because a performance issue does not pass into the realm of a human being being able to notice the lag, doesn't mean that it's not a performance issue, right? So, I want you guys to write nice, good code, right? Good code is the goal. So, oh, and by the way, when the function ends, this region of memory is deallocated and everything inside of it is lost because it's local variables, right? So we are creating and deleting that pointer each time, right? So, we need to get this search to occur after that thing is created, right? There are a couple of ways you can do this. Let me show you the worst way to do it first. That's always fun, right?
Yeah.
Let me show you the bad habit. Let me show you the staying up till 2 a.m. playing video games version of programming in JavaScript. Not looking at anybody in particular. So, I'm just going to get rid of carousel. Carousel is no longer useful to this lesson. So, if the problem is that the page isn't loaded when we run the script, and we run the script as soon as we encounter it, We could do this. Cut, paste.
What, is it move it at the bottom?
That works. Why is this a bad solution?
Because we have to port all our stuff to apps.js.
Well, everything is still, like all of our JavaScript is still in app.js. We're just loading it as the last thing we do in the HTML page. Yes?
It's because it's parsed before the button is, so that.
So because I moved this to the end of the file, this is now parsed as the last thing that the page loads. But why do we not want to do that? What's wrong with doing this? Why is this, like, why should this make you feel like,
Is it the way it's supposed to load? Because as you just explained, right? It loads the HTML and then, right? The head part, which is supposed to be linked to the GS, right?
You're right, it's a stylistic issue, right? The purpose of the head is to load all that stuff, right? So it's like the reason that you put all of your imports at the top of a file in Java, right? That's just where you link to stuff. This is violating convention. Further, it's okay. Maybe you're like, oh, well, everybody, like if it's not at the top of the file, it's at the bottom of the file. That's still a known place, but it's a slippery slope, man. Maybe you start loading scripts in the middle of the body because you have no rules to follow, because you're defying conventions. And then let me ask you a question. Do you want to work on somebody else's JavaScript where at any point in the file they'll just randomly load a script tag? No! That's what hackers do! That's what an XSS attack is they're trying to sneak a script tag into the body. That's what they do. So, if you're putting your JavaScript into the body like a hacker, it's possible that you'll actually get picked up by heuristics that are looking for hackers, right? So, put it in the head like a good little boy or girl, okay? Follow the convention. But of course, this doesn't solve our problem. So, we haven't quite got to it, but there's a way of binding events purely from JavaScript without having to rely on attributes like onClick. It's a more flexible method, and you've got way more different types of events available to you. Finishing the loading of a page is an event that you can bind code to in JavaScript. That's a thing you can do. We're not quite there yet, though. Let me show you the clean, modern way of doing it. Contemporary. Defer. What this does is it tags this script and says, hold off on this one until I'm done loading the file. As we can see, with the defer tag, both the local and the global link pointer are working. Make sense? So that is the cleanest and simplest way of doing that. Defer. will most likely want to attach that attribute to like 100% of the scripts that you write for this class, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. And now you know why. Any questions? Yes.
So, what is the exact thing that defer does?
Defer. So when we load this script element, the default behavior of the browser is to execute it immediately, right? What the defer attribute does is it links it to an internal event that's fired when the page is finished loading, right? So when the browser is loading the HTML and it reaches this point, it runs out of file, an internal event is fired, and there's a bunch of stuff that starts from that internal event. One is page rendering, right? So the page is not being rendered as it's being parsed. Rendering is a step after the thing's been loaded, right? It's finishing loading that triggers rendering, right? So basically, this sandwiches the script between the finishing of parsing the page and the beginning of rendering. So it's just affecting the timing. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good question. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, any other questions? Okay. Well, I think we're probably about the middle of the class, so I think we should probably have our mandatory biology break. Let's resume at 10:38 class, 10:38. Question?
I have a question for the assignment one.
Oh, sure.
Just I wanted to make sure I had the right folder name.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So now, we need to concern ourselves with the passing of actual real data from the website into JavaScript and then back again. So, let's take a simple programming problem and implement it. Not one of the ones from the assignment, something else. So, in order to effect this process, we need an input element and an output element, right? We need at least one input element, and we need, we can actually have as many inputs and outputs as we want for a particular function, like we're not constrained by having one return value. But for now, let's just do one input and one output. So, So, I have added 4 elements to the page. A paragraph containing the text, "What type of bear is best?" An input type text with an ID input box. This is where we shall input data. A button which is linked to an on-click function we have not yet defined. There we go. And a div which has the ID output div. So far so good? Very good. So, let's jump over to our JavaScript. So, in order to change things in a website, we need a reference to the thing we are changing. Equally, to read the state of a component, we also need a reference to the thing. So, const input is equal to document dot query selector. And here's the test. Do you remember what you called the bloody things? Input box. I always have to look. This is like a very obvious application for like side-by-side coding, like panel, like plane splitting, right? Left-right pane splitting. You should do that like when you're working on your assignments, but because I'm like projecting and it has to be so big, it doesn't really work for me here, right? Sorry. Const output is equal to document dot query selector. Output div, I believe I called it. Yes, indeedy do. There we go. Now, we want to write the missing function. Function bear. There we go. Once again, a little print statement at the beginning will let us know that everything is hooked up correctly, even before we start filling out the body of the function. There we go. Everything works. So, now, basically, I'm going to write a very simple function. If the user responds with black bear, that is correct. All other types of bears are incorrect. Does anybody get this joke? No? Oh, that's a shame. All right. This is referential humor to an early episode of the sitcom The Office. Yeah. I'll let you go and look. Just go look up the clip, what type of bear is best, and it's a little funny. It's not hugely humorous, but it's a little laughable. So, if input dot. Now here's the kicker. How do we get the stuff out of an input text box? Anybody care to guess? What's the property name? What's the attribute? This is something you learned in HTML. So let me ask you a question. Let's say you have an input text. Oh, yes.
Is it value?
It is value. Yes, very good. I value your opinion. If input.value is equal to black, with a little bit stronger equality, or if you really want to, you could also capitalize that. There we go. There we go. So, all that remains is outputting the value to the div. So, inner HTML allows you to drop additional HTML tags into page elements. These will be parsed out and rendered as page elements. This is a little dangerous. Inner text does not permit you to do this. We'll see the difference. In fact, maybe I'll just throw in the difference here. There we go. So, what type of bear is best? Black. Correct. Very good. What type of bear is best? A grizzly. Wrong. And you'll notice that because it's been printed with inner text, our HTML elements are being printed to the page rather than being interpreted semantically. Does that make sense? Any questions? No questions? All right. You now know everything you need to complete assignment 2. So, all right. You guys are kind of low energy today. You guys got a test or something?
Nope.
No? You don't have a test on Friday? Yeah?
I have one
Not for Java.
Okay.
That's for JavaScript, for this class, yeah. For Java, you'll be provided a reference sheet at the back of the test.
Okay.
Yeah. But study up because it's not that helpful. The reference sheet gives you a collection of methods for string and for, I think, the JavaFX stuff. Because, you know, it's like, who wants to memorize all of those method names, right? So that's what that's for. So
Professor, for
yes.
GS, do we need to memorize anything for the bootstrap?
Well, we certainly covered it in class, so you know, you will be permitted a cheat sheet for the JavaScript test. So anything that's important or relevant that you feel might be useful during a test having to do with Bootstrap should go on your cheat sheet. But yeah, we've been covering a lot of Bootstrap. Don't bother putting like the text of the carousel on it though. Yeah. But yeah, if you want like a little bit of quick reference on like how the grid system works, what the relevant class names are, that sort of thing.
And what about this sheet? I think we didn't, I wasn't in class when you talked about it. Is it different than the reference sheet? We do that?
So on Java, you are not permitted to bring anything with you to the test. For JavaScript, this class, you are permitted one 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper, double-sided, upon which you may write anything you like. The only thing you can't have on it is more paper.
Okay.
All right.
Anything I can write anything.
You can write anything you like on it, but keep in mind, I know that, and you'll be asked questions that aren't like directly, what is the syntax for declaring a variable, all right?
Okay.
You'll be expected to know things, right?
Yes.
You'll be expected to know things or to be able to look things up if they're basic, right? As a matter of fact, the preparation of the cheat sheet is the best studying you will do for the test. So don't waste the effort, right? So I mentioned that there are two ways of linking things up to events in JavaScript, right? We did the easy way first, which is to simply plunk something down into the HTML. Sorry?
Oh, no, sorry.
Yeah. Plunk down something into the HTML with an on-click attribute or something like onChange is another one. There's a selection of similar attributes that link to events. However, this is not as flexible as the method I'm about to show you. Here's the thing, cats and kittens. The majority of web content is now loaded dynamically through APIs, not in the initial page load. Right? Think about any social media site, right? Do you think it loads like all of your posts at this, like all of your posts come with the original HTML page?
No.
No, we're requesting that stuff through APIs, even if it loads like the first 5 elements for you, right? That's not, you know, if as soon as you're scrolling past that, you're working with dynamic page content, right? So if it's dynamic content, then you're not statically encoding events, JavaScript events, right? That's what we did is static encoding, right? What we want is dynamic encoding, right? We want to be able to link events dynamically. Perhaps we even want to be able to link events in response to other events, right? So this is what we're going to now cover. So, let's take this function and link it dynamically as opposed to linking it statically. All right? So, the first thing that we need to do is we need to remove the static link. There we go. We no longer are using the onClick event. Now, we need some way of binding an event to this page element. What do we need? Yes?
90?
Yes. We need some way of searching for that thing on the page. ID bare button. That will do. So, what's our next step?
Making a variable to link to it.
Very good. In our JavaScript, we make a variable to link to it.
Sir,
Yes.
should we get rid of the image carousel from this?
I did because it's just cluttering up the page.
Okay.
Yeah.
We don't have to?
Yeah, you can leave it if you want. It's just like, you know, it was just kind of cluttering things up, you know. So, button is a reserved word. So something like BTN is a good abbreviation. Even bare button, perhaps. Documents, dot, query, selector. You should get used to that phrase. You'll be typing it a lot. Bare button. There you have it. So we then have our function declared. We will not modify the function just yet. So, we use our page element reference and the method add event listener. Add event listener takes two arguments. The first is the type of event we are listening for. The second is the function to fire when that event occurs. So, the way that JavaScript prefers you to provide the type of event that you're listening for is by providing one of a series of strings. Click is one of them, but where there's a whole host of them, we'll get into the different types of events shortly. The second here is the function. We refer to the function by reference. Note the absence of round braces. If we provided round braces at the end of this function name, what would we be doing?
We'd be just we'd be calling the function to activate right there.
That's right. We would be calling the function here, and we would be passing the return value of the function into the event listener. Now, the add event listener function expects a function, right? It expects a function reference here. If you give it a number or a string, it's going to be what? You're trying to bind a string to a button? That doesn't make any sense at all, and I laugh at you. And that's how because JavaScript hates you. So, it's very important, common beginner pitfall, to include those braces there. So don't include the braces there. Okay, you get it? Okay? Sound good? Yes.
Can you please re-explain it?
Perhaps I'll just show you the difference.
Okay.
So no braces whatsoever.
No braces there, yeah, that's right. All right, let's go to the page. Go to the page, oh, go to the page. Oh, that's not the page. There we go. Boop. Boop. There we go, so it works. Now, let me modify the code and show you the difference. So if you put the round braces in there, that means you're now calling the function immediately. What's the matter here? Are you caching or something? Ah. Yes. So, I even confuzzled myself. I was like, wait a second, where is this coming from? That's actually a good question. Where is this coming from? It wasn't there before. I reload the page and it's just there. I click the button and nothing happens. I don't get any errors because JavaScript hates you. Right? A language that doesn't give you errors when it should hates you. So, the reason that this appears immediately is when we execute this line of code, right, which is done after page loading and before page rendering, this function is called immediately, right? So the function is called immediately with no arguments, right? It's looking for a value here. It's not finding, like, in fact, it's finding an empty string, so it's definitely not finding the word black, so it's outputting the error text, right? And of course, the function has not been bound to the button, so if you click, 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 it does nothing. That's the difference. Does that make sense? So, that's the difference between working with a function reference and calling a function. You can call a function reference at any time, you just have to provide the round braces. Any questions? Does that make sense? Good, good, good? All right. You have a question?
I was going to see if you could like go back to next navigation. Okay, I think I'm missing something for my button.
You might be missing the ID.
No, I haven't. I think I'm missing. Oh, I think I'm missing. Oh, I think I'm missing the second button.
So, this is how you bind something dynamically. Later on in the course, we'll see how to create HTML components dynamically, properly, dynamically from JavaScript, and we will also see how to bind events to newly created things that we create out of pure JavaScript. Okay? Which is a cool thing to be able to do if you want to be able to, you know, display database output and that sort of thing. So, any questions? Shall we explore some of the event listeners we have on offer? Some of the ones we have available. All right. In your HTML, please make. Oh, yes.
So, yeah, I can't click on the box. That's my problem. I think maybe the images are like taken up.
Show me. Show me your page. I can't remember. Oh, yeah, I would. I'd.
Remove the images.
Yeah, or just like remove the carousel. If it's interfering, remove it. If your carousel offends thee, cut it off. So,
There we go.
so let's make a new div. We'll experiment with some of these event listeners. Give it a style property, yes.
Well, now it's not letting me submit an answer.
One moment, please. Oh man. Is it colon or equal sign? Okay, that'll work. Save. You're fine.
Let's try it.
So,
It's still not working.
I have to keep moving with the lesson.
It says bare button. It's not defined for some reason.
Yes, basically it's failing to read the reference. So, it's failing to find the element in the DOM, which means that running the script as deferred is probably the problem, but it could be something else too. So, we have a div. Everybody have the div? Yeah, those of us who are, following along. So, we need a reference to the div. Is it the only div in the page? Let's see. Might be.
Professor, can you do
Not
a
quite.
new code?
Which code?
Like a new code?
A
Or
new-
you want to use the same one? Because I want to follow up. I don't have this code.
You can just leave this part out.
Okay, and just add the div. Okay.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
So, I'll put an ID on this div. Ooh, I forgot to close it. Silly me. There we go. I'll put an ID on this div. We'll call this funky div. There we go. And of course, we'll need a reference to it. So you can bind multiple different event types to one element as well. Let's just bind a regular click event to it this time, but this time I'm going to use an anonymous function. I'm going to use a lambda. So, funky div is equal to dot add event listener. Click. And now function. There we go. This dot style dot background color is equal to, someone give me a CSS color. Blue, blue. Come on, do better than that. Alice blue? Okay. Alice blue is the hello world of CSS colors. So, a couple of things to note here. Number one, syntax for anonymous functions. We reviewed this before, but here it is again. This is overwhelmingly the most common way you'll see this done. This .style.background color, note the this keyword. It functions reasonably similarly to the this keyword in Java. All right? However, we're not inside of a class context here, we're inside of a function context, right? Within this function context, we are binding to the object, this binds to the object that the function is being applied to, all right? It's a little bit different in Java. This in Java means the same thing anywhere inside of a class. Here it's dependent on the function that you're in. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay. But that's the easiest and most convenient way to refer to the element. Let's just demonstrate that it works. Quick. Oh, there you go. Alice Blue. So, yes?
I was gonna say, you might be missing something with the index.html for this because it didn't show up on my end, so it could be missing something. I want to double check. I have stuff for apps. I don't know if I'm missing something.
You're missing the div.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So, now, some people, I'm not particularly fond of this way of doing things, but I'll show it to you anyways. Those of you who are astute programmers may note this reference and this value here. Do we really need to declare a variable for that? Maybe not. This also works. This is kind of a more like, I like jQuery, but I'm being forced to use vanilla JavaScript kind of way of doing things. Document.query selector, funky div, dot, add event listener. We'll do that. I'll show you what mouse over looks like. Mouse over function this dot style dot background color is equal to, how about Amanda purple? Is it Amanda or is it Rebecca purple? I always forget. I don't know. Red brick. There we go. Or brick red. There we go. Anyway, sidetracking ourselves. That's not a real color. That's not a real color. Wow, okay, fine. light blue it is then. Alright. Oh, did you see that? I mouse over and boop! It's now light blue. Very good. So, let me tell you a little bit about why I don't like this stylistically. It's ugly as sin, basically. This line is way too long. Everybody agree? That line is way too long? I think that line is way too long. So, but here's the problem. JavaScript hates you. Alright? Method chaining like this is a common thing that's done in JavaScript. Alright? This is actually a more common construction than you might think it is. So, how do we manage that? How do we manage the complexity? Well, you're going to hate this. I'm going to show it to you anyways. It's quite common in JavaScript to do that. It's not great, but it does improve the readability somewhat, right? So, if this is giving you a queasy feeling in your stomach, that's correct, because what we've done is we've split a class application operator, right? We've split the dot over a new line, right? This is gross. It feels gross because it is gross, but it is, and it's better than leaving it all on one line, because that also becomes completely unmanageable, especially considering we're only chaining 2 methods here, and by the end of the course we're going to be chaining more than that, right? Let me show you. Let me give you a foretaste of the train coming down the tunnel at you at the end of this course, right? We're going to be studying a method, a function called fetch, which is AJAX requests, right? So fetch has some data in here, right? Right? This is an abbreviated form. This is actually, like, this thing is in some cases like several lines of object, right? If you kept all of it on one line, it would be completely impossible to work with. Once you split this into multiple lines, it's about 8 of them, right? So you gotta split on dots. Otherwise, it's completely unmanageable, right? Especially because in this case I even did I forget? Yeah. And then there's another one here that's error, which you can also include optionally. That's what this chained method thing ends up looking like. JavaScript hates you. Okay? But yeah, that's practical JavaScript right there. So, again, it's not my favorite thing to do stylistically. By the way, the reason that jQuery is like still retains some degree of popularity is that you can do this with it. Like that's the equivalent syntax for this in jQuery. Oh, except replace click for mouse over, right? So like that's the reason, because of course programmers make all their decisions based on how many keystrokes they have to make to do something, right? Yeah. Anyway, any questions? No. All right. Let me show you one more way of doing this. Let me just copy this. Copy that thing again. I'm going to show you an arrow function. So, with arrow functions, you can include curly braces or not. They're optional. If it's only one line of code, there are no curly braces. Well, they're optional. If there's more than one line of code, then you do need curly braces. So, there you have it. Let's make this navy blue so it's different. There we go. Is this still on mouse over? Yeah, mouse out. There we go. So mouse out is the companion to mouse over. Mouse over is when your cursor enters an area. Mouse out is when it leaves an area. Mouse in, mouse out. Uh-oh. Cannot set properties of undefined. Within the arrow function, this doesn't exist. If we add curly braces, it still doesn't exist. So this is an important thing to understand. It's the difference between, the major difference between an arrow function and an anonymous function. Arrow function, anonymous function, two different types of lambda expressions. This guy creates a new context for variables. It creates its own local scope. This guy does not. This does not exist in that context. So, you can make it work. You need an external reference. Navy blue doesn't exist? I guess not. Let's just try regular blue then. There we go. So, you can do it with an external reference, but if the thing that you're trying to avoid is having to keep and maintain that variable, then that's not the one you want. All right? This is why you will most of the time see this one, even though this one is shorter. Right? Because this one is correct in most situations. It gives you access to that thing. Make sense? There's probably a way of getting this in here somehow with the arguments, but, so it goes. So, any questions?
So for a lot of these like query selectors, we use IDs, right? Can we also use classes?
Yes.
Okay.
So the reason that I'm using IDs quite a bit is I'm using query selector get me one thing. IDs are supposed to be unique,
Yeah.
right? I say supposed to be because like there's nothing preventing you from creating multiple things with the same ID value, except that it won't validate, but that's not like a strict condition, right? But yeah, if you want to do query selector all right?
So that's why you would use for classes if you're manipulating multiple classes and you want to change all of them.
That's a good example. Let's take a look at that. So let's look at the thing that where we have multiple things on the page. Let's make like 3 paragraphs, right? 4 paragraphs. What if we want to modify all of these at once? Right?
Query selector O, right?
Yes. So let's go in here. Documents.query selector all. Paragraph. This also works if you want to select by class. Right?
Oh.
So you want me to do it explicitly by class?
Yeah.
Okay. So class equals food. Something like that. I'm intentionally leaving one of them off. Okay. So, there we go. So, query selector all gets .foo. So now, things get a little tricky if we're wanting to use the method chaining approach. At this point, I might recommend just taking that, saving it as a variable. It will be an array. You can write a loop, work with it inside that loop. But let's do it the hard way, shall we? So, a common way of doing things that this was like the only way to do things in JavaScript for a long time. I think it was like either 5 or 10 years ago, JavaScript had for each loop syntax added that's very similar to Java's. In JavaScript case, it's called a for in loop because, instead of like for each or for as, it's for in. They all mean different things, right? But this is the way that it was for quite some time. Basically, this is a mapping function. It takes a function and applies that function to each element of the data structure. So, for example, this dot style dot color equals red. Oh, I remember. I think X. Yeah, that's it. Oh man. What's amazing is that JavaScript is always consistent about the way that it does things, right? So with a for each loop, you don't get access to this. It passes each element of the data structure as the first argument to the anonymous function. That's how you can get at it. So you basically have to construct your own this. This dot style dot color is equal to red. There you go. You can see that now works. 3 out of 4 of them are red. Question?
When did you put the brackets? I can't tell from back here.
Sure. Can you see it now?
Yeah.
X. Just a variable name. If you wanted to be a bit more semantic, you would call it like elem or element, because it's an element of the array. Of course, we're not interested in just yanking it around from here. We wanted to create event listeners, right? So, dot add event listener, click, function, this dot color dot this dot style dot color is equal to red. Let's check to see that works. Click, 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 click. It works. That's an important difference, right? In the earlier version, we were simply writing the red color attribute to each of the elements. In this version, we are binding the event listener click to each of these elements. So you can see that this is already a much more flexible and powerful way of assigning event listeners, right? Because I can literally just query search over the page and, change the event to add an event to every element of the page, have that event be when you click on something, it takes you to a Rickroll, right? You guys want to see what a page direct looks like in JavaScript? What is it? Window dot. Window dot location. Well, I have to. Window dot location is equal to just do it to Google because I don't want to look up the Rickroll link. Click, and it's Google. Click, and it's Google. If you want to have, if you want to do a little bit of mischief, which is of course the correct application of JavaScript is mischief. Let me show you the code again. Thank you for that question. So, and you can, I think everybody here should be able to figure out, if I was saving the output here to an array, you'd do a for loop, and then inside the for loop, you'd do array at I dot add event listener, right? In that manner. This is definitely less understandable to a non-JavaScript programmer, but to a seasoned JavaScript programmer, this is like probably easier than a for loop because it doesn't have any extra variables going on, right? I mean, it kind of does,
Yeah, the X.
but like, yeah. So, any questions? Anybody interested in seeing me do anything? No, like there are lots of good digressions that are like, what if you did that? And it's, yes.
I get a quick picture of the div, considering everything's been going so fast, I haven't really had time to put it in before I can test everything. Thank you.
I will be posting the code after class. So,
Does query selector all work with ID?
well, yes.
Yes.
Assuming that there's only one ID for something in the page, query selector all will return an array that contains a single item that is the item you're looking for.
Let's say I give the paragraph an ID,
Mhm.
but you had like in the code you had each sentence in a different paragraph, right?
Yep.
Let's say I gave one of the paragraph an ID, would it select it all? Or it would select the only one that has ID, right?
That's right.
So,
However, query selector all returns an array. So even if it finds there's only one match to the query in the page, it will put that one match into an array for you.
okay.
Good. Good question. Anybody else? Anything else? All right. So, a couple of things about these events. There's a fairly large list of them. One thing that's kind of conspicuous by its absence, there's no hover event. All right? We don't really need an explicit hover event. We have mouse in, we have mouse out. Between the two of those, these create the effect of a hover, right? But they are two separate events, right? In fact, it makes a lot of sense that there's no explicit hover event, because an event that fires like once every, like tick, whatever tick is defined as, for the entire duration of the mouse being in a thing, is that useful? Maybe, maybe not. It's certainly more processing. So, here's one thing for us to finish on. Returning to our div event listener, there are things that we can gather, pieces of information we can gather from the event itself that may be useful to us in one form or another. One of these, well, here we go. So, right now, we are not accepting any input from the event listener. Again, it's getting passed, it's just getting thrown out, because JavaScript you can pass, you can oversupply a function with arguments, it just, it registers them, but it doesn't bind them to a variable, right? You can still get at them even. But let's just bind it to a variable and see what we get. if we click, you see that we are past an object called pointer event, which has a fair amount of information in it, actually. Alt key, false, altitude, angle, azimuth angle, bubbles, cancel bubble. Control key, are you holding the control key or not when you made the click? Layer X, layer Y, pointer ID, pointer type, mouse, screen X, screen Y. So, screen X and screen Y, client X and client Y are interesting ones. These are the coordinates on the screen where the click event occurred. So, if you wanted to create a little thing in a particular point on the screen, that's what you would need, right? You can also tell which button was the one that was clicked. So, notice button 0. Oh man, how do you disable the right click menu? Assuming you had the right click menu disabled and all these default behaviors disabled, you could get buttons to work. You can also bind to right-click events and double-click events. Let's take a look at the list. So, click, double-click, which is, a double-click. Mouse over and out, mouse move. If you're looking for something more resembling a hover event, that's probably what you're looking for. Mouse down and mouse up. So the difference between a click and a mouse down and a mouse up, right? So, right? So if this is like the graph of the state of the mouse over time, the mouse is up, you press the mouse button, it's down, it's held for a period of time, even if this is a small number of milliseconds, like 2 milliseconds, right? Maybe this whole thing occurs in only like 2.5 milliseconds, right? Then it returns to its up state, right? This would be a mouse down event. This is a mouse up event. I believe the click is here, but probably requires the mouse down to have occurred only X number of milliseconds ago, right? This gap probably can't be too long or it won't register as a click, right? Kind of similar to how a double click has to look like that, and like these two can't be too far apart or it doesn't count as a double click. It counts as 2 consecutive clicks. Right? Make sense? Alright. Okay. Well, any questions? Alright, study up for the Java test. I'll see you on Thursday. Question?